Wherever she walks and whenever she talks, people take notice. And there's very good reason why. I'd like to welcome Pamela Geller as one of our favorite daughters. After all, she was raised in Nassau County. She attended Lynbrook High School and Hofstra University. Ms. Geller is the founder, editor, and publisher of Atlas Shrugs and executive director of the American Freedom Defense Initiative and Stop Islamization of America. Ms. Geller is a noted author. As a matter of fact, after our Q&A, she actually has brought books with her, I believe. And I believe you will inscribe those books?
Happy to.
Absolutely.
In blood.
In blood.
Someone else's.
A noted author, columnist, media commentator, subject of major broadcast shows, iconic newspapers, and the list goes on and on and on. She's received too many awards to list here tonight, but one in particular was given to her by the United States Marine Corps when they presented her with the flag flown on September 11, 2011 over Camp Leatherneck. Quote, amid the battlefields of Afghanistan during decisive operations against enemy forces, unquote. Ms. Geller has broken world-class news stories. In addition, she's well recognized for her leadership against the Ground Zero Mosque. I'd like to add this one thought, and I dare say that Ms. Pamela Geller will agree and can tell you even where it came from. Quote, you can avoid reality, but you cannot avoid the consequences of avoiding reality. Ms. Pamela Geller.
Thank you very much. I want to thank Mr. Buckley for appearing, first off, with me, because I'm sure you come under withering criticism, and for coming up here, it's now, what, 3 times, and opening a vein and sharing his experience with us. I think the takeaway from Mr. Buckley, apart from the obvious, is there are consequences. There are consequences to this fantasist policy, this delusional policy that the United States is pursuing in the Middle East, in Africa, and in America. Greg Buckley's son was disarmed, literally. But Greg Buckley's son was disarmed, metaphorically. Our troops are not trained in the jihadic doctrine. He knew, his son knew that they hated him. He didn't know why they hated him. So how can you possibly defeat an enemy that you're too afraid to name? We see this over and over again. He's right, these are not green on blue attacks. These are jihadi attacks against the infidel. That's what that is. And as far as the money that he speaks to, the 300,000 or the billions that we're giving out of the Muslim Brotherhood, it's jizya. Under Islam, non-Muslims in Muslim lands must pay a poll tax, an exorbitant tax. This is how they funded 1,400 years of war campaigns, 1,400 years of jihadi wars, land appropriations, cultural annihilations, and enslavements. On the jizya, on the backs of the Christians and the Jews and the non-believers. Don't believe me? Read. What are we doing in Afghanistan? I ask you. Why are we empowering the Taliban, a devoutly religious group who is slaughtering our soldiers, burning the schools that we're building, You could say, well, it's just the Taliban. It is not just the Taliban. In Nigeria, they're slaughtering Christians. The Boko Haram. You know what Boko Haram means in Arabic? It means Western education is sinful. Slaughtering. And Barack Obama will not designate Boko Haram a terrorist group. Now in America, they'll designate me a domestic hate group because I oppose jihad. What happened to Greg Buckley is a crime. And any one of you that goes home and does not go onto online, I don't care if you're not savvy, go to Google, put in contact my congressman. It'll take you right to the site. Locate your congressman or your senator and write a letter. Like it was your son or your nephew or you write that letter. It makes a difference. Because Peter King has been writing on his behalf and a number of other legislators have been writing. They have to answer for it. They will not answer for it. They have not answered for Benghazi. Let's talk about Benghazi. And it shocks me as an American that we have lost our soul. Since when did we stop caring about our fellow countrymen? When did that happen? I mean, we have such a code for humanity that the military will not leave one of our soldiers on the field. We bring back every boy, every girl. And yet nobody cares what happened in Benghazi. We left 2 Marines on a roof for 7 hours, 7 brutal hours, fighting a jihadi army in Libya. They begged for help, no answer. We had people there. And now, the people that want to talk are being threatened by the Obama administration. The whistleblowers. They're not whistleblowers, they're Americans. I want to understand how America elected Barack Obama on the heels of Benghazi. I want to understand this. I want to understand that media that does not ask a question. I want to understand this. And now, you think it doesn't matter because it was Libya? It's here.
Yeah.
It's here. Boston was jihad. Boston was the day after I was in Great Neck. Now, let me just say something. I have here, and I started to assemble it, but it became too unwieldy. Thwarted jihadi attacks in the United States. The attempted bombing of the synagogues in Manhattan, the attack on the church in Ohio on Easter, and the killing of a Christian, the 2 Christian Egyptian Coptics who were beheaded in New Jersey, the Federal Reserve building, the Christmas Day bomber, the Fort Hood jihadi. But there's a list of thwarted attacks. Since when, because they didn't kill anybody, did it stop mattering? Now I'm going to tell you something. Barack Obama, at the urging of Muslim Brotherhood groups in this country, and when I say Muslim Brotherhood groups, I mean the Council of American Islamic Relations, the Islamic Society of North America, the Islamic Circle of North America, the Muslim Student Association, the Muslim Student Union. I am not calling them that. The United States government called them that, Muslim Brotherhood groups, named them unindicted co-conspirators in the largest terrorist funding trial in our nation's history, the Holy Land Foundation trial, demanded that jihad and Islam be removed from counter-terror manuals and training materials in the States. So when the FBI gets a call from the Russians that they have a problem with these 2, well, one was an American citizen, as you know, Chechnyan Muslims, and the FBI does nothing. And the Russians get so frustrated because they know they've been suffering the jihad in Russia with the Chechens for a very long time. I mean, the worst terrorist attack that I ever heard, and that's all I do is jihad porn, trust me. Well, that's what it is. They run this stuff online, and it gets them off. And that's what it is. Then Beslan. Beslan was the taking of a children's school, hundreds and hundreds of children that were taken hostage, that were sexually abused with electronic products, that were tortured. The most unspeakable crimes against children, unspeakable. The media hid it, of course, because the media is always very busy scrubbing jihad. They're aligned with the jihad force. And so they went to the CIA because they got no response from the FBI. And if that wasn't enough, you had the Saudi Arabia in writing warn that these two were a problem. And yet we did nothing. What you don't see happening for the past 6 years is that Obama has been dismantling many of the counter-terror measures that we have in place that you don't see. For a long time, I had someone at the State Department who would send me cables of financial transactions that were flagged daily by the State Department. Transactions that were clearly going to fund either state sponsors of terror or terrorist groups, so on and so forth. That stopped under Obama. Stopped. So here you have a terrorist attack, no intel, no follow-up. And what's interesting is that what you have in place has been dismantled and attacked by the Islamic supremacists and the left. For example, you know about NYPD surveilling on radical groups. Okay? Now this came under enormous attack. The AP won a Pulitzer Prize for it, for exposing it. Okay? And so nobody was surveilling. Right? And what's interesting is that every one of these thwarted attacks, every single one. Now, the big ones like the Brooklyn Bridge attack that was thwarted, the subway cyanide attack that was thwarted, the New York Stock Exchange that was thwarted, the Garment District plot, the Herald Square bombing, the PATH train bombing, the JFK bombing, I'm sure you remember that one, the transatlantic, I mean, it's on and on. There's always an FBI informant. So in the defense in these trials, the jihadists always say, I was entrapped by the FBI. Well, I want to ask you something. Is there anyone that could entrap you to strap a bomb on or to build a bomb to slaughter innocents? And let me tell you about those bombs in Boston. They weren't ordinary bombs. They were not designed to take down buildings. They were not designed to kill people. They were designed to rip through blood and flesh and bone and maim and mutilate. They're the same bombs that our soldiers have been maimed by in Afghanistan and in Iraq. And you're going to tell me today you finally arrested the two friends with the terrorista license plates that hid the backpack with the fireworks? You did that today? You didn't do that last week? You're in trouble. You're in trouble. And it's people like me that talk about it that are demonized and marginalized and ruined. Ruined. I'm supposed to speak at Chabad in Toronto, May 14th. The police went to the rabbi of the Chabad and relentlessly pressured him to cancel me until they told him they were going to fire him from his York chaplaincy, and I was canceled last night. And now I understand the Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Kenney, is under pressure to not allow me in the country.
Wow.
And if you see what's speaking at Canadian campuses, you have literally terrorists from the Middle East, I'm not making this up, speaking at campuses. And I am banned from a country because I oppose jihad and I oppose Sharia. They like to say, oh, you paint all Muslims with a broad brush. No, no, you're painting all Muslims with a broad brush. I expect peaceful Muslims to stand with me and to oppose the jihad and to oppose the Sharia. That's what I expect. I tell you what does bother me is that I have been doing this since 9/11. That was my wake-up call. I was completely apolitical before this. I have witnessed literally tens of thousands of Muslims across the world protesting cartoons, burning embassies, burning churches, slaughtering Christians because of a cartoon, an innocuous cartoon, or a YouTube video. How many times have we seen that? Where are the protests against jihad? Where are the protests against honor killing? Clitorectomies. Where are they? You can't, because they don't have a theological leg to stand on. Because honor killing is very much part of the Sharia. It is. Page 58 of the Reliance of the Traveler. Look it up. Read it. Read the Quran. Read it. Don't burn it. Read it. You have to understand what we're up against. It's not going away. There was an ebb. I understand that. When the British defeated the Ottoman Empire and it was destroyed. Yes. So you had a 20th century breather. Okay? Jefferson didn't. The first foreign war was a war against Muslims, the Barbary Wars, and the second foreign war as well. So when they say, oh look, isn't that sweet, Congressman Hakeem Mohammed is taking his oath on Thomas Jefferson's Quran, as if Thomas Jefferson read the Quran to understand the enemy doctrine. That's why he had a Quran. The disinformation and dissembling is breathtaking. And the fact is that our policies on Muslim immigration from jihad countries is reprehensible. The policies of refugee resettlement, do you even know how refugees are resettled in this country? Do you even know who decides who a refugee is? I will tell you who decides. The UN. The UN, which is largely driven by the largest world body. What is the largest world body? The largest world body is the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. 56 Muslim countries plus the Palestinian Authority, and they vote as one bloc. That's why you see literally scores of resolutions against Israel, but none against Syria, and none in the Congo, none against Sudan. 2 million were slaughtered in Sudan. How come no one ever just tells you why they were slaughtered? That's a jihadi war. It's the Islamic North slaughtering the Christian and animist South. Did you ever hear George Looney talk about that part of Darfur? Or Mia Farrow? This is scary stuff. Now people say, why is this going on? Because under Islam, you cannot criticize, you cannot insult, you cannot defame Islam. It is blasphemy, and blasphemy is punishable by death, and Christians are punished by death in Muslim countries. It's kept very quiet. I write about it. Of course, my partner, my colleague Robert Spencer writes about it. The few sites write about it. But I tell you, if you take this on, you have to have the skin of steel, and you cannot care what anybody thinks of you. And not a lot of people are built that way. Now, I don't have a lot of time. I want to get to questions and answers, but I want people to understand this ad campaign that I do. These ad campaigns were always a response to an ad campaign. Always. The Israel ads, I'm sure you've seen them. In any war between the civilized man and the savage, support the civilized man, support Israel, defeat jihad. What you didn't probably hear about is the same ad ran that said support the Hindus, defeat jihad, and support the Coptic Christians and defeat jihad. They never talked about that, which always speaks to me to a systematic and institutionalized anti-Semitism, because you say Israel and everybody gets very upset. But that was in response to 3 anti-Israel campaigns that were running, fallacious, libelous campaigns. This is true. Jihad is savage. The targeting of innocent civilians is savagery. The targeting of the Focal family is savagery. The blowing up of buses in London and in Bulgaria of Jewish women and children is savagery. That's why I did that campaign. Because the media is disarming the American people. The military is disarming our boys. That's what's happening. You need to get armed. You need knowledge. And when you get knowledge, you have to share it. You have to teach people. You are an American. What does that mean? It means that you are imbued with the power of the individual. No other country in the world was ever based on the individual, was ever based on the principle of individual rights. No one is going to save you. You are going to save you. You need to understand that. No one is going to save you. You have to get up and fight. It's the reason why there's a First Amendment to speak. In the war of ideas, we must be able to speak. They try and shut me down. This is what worries me. They try and shut people like, I don't speak on campuses. But Imam Raouf, the Ground Zero Mosque Imam, he gets 30K a speech. Reza Aslan is getting an award, a big award from the Tannenbaum, another Jewish Divi Jewicidal group. Reza Aslan, a Khomeiniist, supports Khomeini. He's getting an award for interfaith dialogue and bridges. Yeah, you know bridges? Sayyid Qutb's bridges. Because under Islam, you have to build bridges. The bridge goes one way, to Islam. Read it. Read it and understand it. The second campaign, okay, was Hamas was running campaigns. My jihad is to stay fit. My jihad is to stay fit. There was a bunch of them. My jihad is to make friends. Okay, this is propaganda. This makes globals blush. So I did a campaign. Okay, we have the Fort Hood jihadi and his quotes. We have Osama said, Osama invited us to Islam. Before they kill you, they have to invite you to Islam. The first thing that we are calling you is to Islam. That's a direct quote. That's his jihad. What's yours? Okay? Sheikh Qaradawi calling for the slaughter of homosexuals. And killing Jews is worship that draws us close to Allah. That's Hamas Music Television. And then in response to this, CARE again did an ad campaign citing Quran. Citing Quran that's abrogated. Because if you understand, there's 3 stages in Islam. The first is peaceful, yes. The second is defensive jihad, and the third stage is offensive jihad. Offensive jihad, offensive jihad. So they said to Muhammad, but you're contradicting yourself between the first and the second and the... What comes later, he said, supersedes everything. Islam is revealed, it's progressive, and what comes later abrogates. Now, abrogation, ask any Islamic scholar, the process of abrogation. So, the most violent is the third. These jihadists in Boston were devout Muslims. Now, do I believe that every Muslim is a jihadi? Of course not. But I don't have to pat them on the back for not wanting to kill me. There's a problem in Islam. They're slaughtering the Buddhists in Thailand. They're slaughtering the Christians in Malaysia and Indonesia and Ethiopia. In Bangladesh, hundreds of thousands of Muslims are demonstrating violently for the death of bloggers. Atheist bloggers. The Uyghurs in China. The jihad against Israel. It's just jihad. It ain't about land, folks. The very existence of Israel is an insult and offensive to devout Muslims. So CARE, back to this campaign, CARE decides to do a Quran campaign, an abrogated verse about show forgiveness, avoid ignorance. The only thing that was missing was my picture next to ignorance. And so I did a campaign too. I quoted the Quran. Soon shall we cast terror into the hearts of the unbelievers. Quran 3:15. That's what I did. We have to educate. We have to leapfrog over the media. This is why I do these campaigns. A campaign went up yesterday, a new one. Brand new campaign went up yesterday because they ran a campaign calling Israel an apartheid state. Israel an apartheid state. Israel who has Muslims in the Knesset calling for the destruction of Israel. But there are no Jews in the Muslim world. And look what happens to Christians in the Muslim world. So I did a campaign too. My campaign was, this is Islamic apartheid. And it has a picture of a child who's in shackles, and it says 20% of the population of Mauritania are slaves, black slaves, under Muslim slave lords. Did you know that 20% was in slavery under Muslim owners? Yes, that's one of the ads. Another one of the ads is a woman being whipped in Indonesia. A rape victim, who wouldn't marry her rapist. So, she's got to go to jail. You don't marry your rapist, you got to go to jail. Forget about the fact that you need four male witnesses to a rape. So, okay, so the men stood there and watched, and then they're going to testify for you? The third campaign is the flag that flew over the Intifada. The Palestinian flag, and in Arabic it says, on Saturday we massacre the Jews, and on Sunday we massacre the Christians. It's a series. It's a series, and there's one with the gays, and 4 gay men being hung in Iran. Gays under the Sharia. This went up. This got no publicity. No, this is not something they want to run on television. I don't know why not. It's the truth. Don't we care? What happened to our humanity? You must get educated. You must learn everything. You plan your lives. You plan your estates. You leave your wills. You think you're leaving your children better off. You are not. The world that they are about to face is unfathomable. Nothing happens for decades, and decades happen in a day. You listen to me. We have lost whole swaths of the Middle East to Islamic supremacist regimes. You didn't like the secular Arab regimes? You ain't seen nothing yet. The Muslim Brotherhood, whom Obama empowered, he shoved the Muslim Brotherhood down the throat of the Egyptians, and the army, who was really in charge militarily. His best friend, his most trusted ally, is Erdogan, who has literally wiped the whole idea of Ataturk and a moderate Muslim country in Turkey off the map. Off the map! Ataturk was the great hope of the West. Ataturk is now a blip on the historical landscape. It's unbelievable what's happening. Libya, what was he doing in Libya? We don't get our oil from Libya. France does. Let them fight. What are we doing there? He's sending boys into Africa now? For who? For what? After Libya fell, Mali fell, right, to Al-Qaeda. And our moderate Muslim countries like Tunisia fell to Sharia. And Morocco is now going that way. It's a domino. So I urge you, here you see the human cost. You know how many there are, like Mr. Buckley? You have any idea the escalation in green on blue attacks? We train them. We're training them, we arm them. We're buying their arms. And now Obama, this is right after the New York Times, the biggest enemy there is, admitted there are no secular parties fighting in Syria. It's all jihad. And while I certainly don't like Assad, I ain't thrown in with the jihadists. I ain't thrown in with Al-Qaeda. Yesterday said that he's going to give lethal, his word, not mine, to Syria. Do you see where all this is going? So I'm telling you that this is your number one concern. It's not the economy, because what good's your wallet if you ain't got your head? You better wake up, because Boston was not a one-off. Boston was, finally, all these attacks that we thwarted, okay? Finally, Obama's policies and disarming the American people and law enforcement and putting Brennan in charge of the CIA, Brennan, who calls Jerusalem Al-Quds, Brennan, who said jihad is a legitimate tenet of Islam. That's who's in charge of your CIA. You better wake up, because you're in trouble. Thank you very much.
Okay.